we have a one-item agenda with several parts to it. Copy of the back if you want to follow along. The crux of the meeting is going to be centered around a presentation made by Mr. John Glover, who's the proposed purchaser and developer of the Conger building slash ice house. You gave it 3 names, I think, in the memo. But anyway, Mr. Glover is going to make his presentation. Following that, part of what we need to do in the consideration of this is to have a valuation report from our town manager on the property itself. And then once we get past that, then the only action that the town council will be taking tonight is to call for a public hearing on the sale of the building. So we're in a step that's necessary for us to follow based on the statutes by which we're trying to sell this piece of property. So that being said, welcome Mr. John Glover to the floor. And John, we look forward to your presentation. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Town Council, for having me back to Edenton. It's a pleasure to be back down here on a rainy day, rainy night as well. This is a presentation I think most everyone's seen. We have a few updates based upon feedback from the Town Council as well as Anne Marie. But we're very excited about the opportunity to purchase the building. We made great progress in the last 6 months. There have been lots of details from floodproofing to zoning that we've been able to work through, and I appreciate everyone's patience. I thought it would be helpful just to quickly go through a couple of slides, but the primary objective is to address, number one, the concern about the piece of the building which the sailing, I think the sailing group is leasing currently or is involved with. So we'll address that, and then also I think the outside seating was an opportunity to discuss as well. So we'll try to get through those pretty quickly, and then from there we can open it up for questions. As you recall, my interest drives back to my grandfather, J.H. Conger, who originally had a ice slash Texaco business in the building. And so we're excited about the opportunity to bring that back into the family. This is just a couple of old pictures of what the building used to look like and the current state of the building as well. As you recall, the opportunity that we're excited about is bringing a brew pub to the town of Edenton. I've engaged David Maurer, who's an architect out of Raleigh. He's very talented. Unfortunately, he could not be here tonight, but he's very talented. Is extremely busy in Raleigh and focuses a lot on small towns, craft breweries itself. I think the mayor and Anne Marie have a relationship with him throughout some local town conferences as well. That's the proposed property as far as the acquisition. This was the original seating floor plan as proposed. And I think as you recall, there was some concern about the kitchen being in this 670 square foot piece that is now currently occupied, I think, by the sailing group. So after receiving some feedback on that, we went back to the architect to see if we could potentially resolve this issue. This was their phase 2 proposal. After looking at that, the team felt like that was still not sufficient. And we went back to David, and David Maurer, the architect, proposed this as the potential floor plan for the brew pub. And I think what's unique about this currently is that we're able to, if you look at the top, to shrink the kitchen, move that out of that parcel next with the sailing groups in, and bring that to the interior of the building. We also reduce the size of the brewery and the cellar and the tap room, and I think this is going to be a very efficient layout. That's our hope. So at this point, it's my goal to proceed with, if town council votes in favor, is to proceed with the details of this plan. The food piece has been evolving. We've actually seen, and I've had some conversations with a couple of groups on this kitchen and the food piece. And before we can completely confirm that we would not utilize that other piece of the building, we do need to get into the details of the size of the kitchen. I was just on the phone on the trip down with Inez and Stephen from the On the Square in Tarboro. They have, I think, a very sincere interest in partnering with us here in Edenton on the food piece. Unfortunately, she cannot participate in the brewing side because of some statutes with the legislature, but I think in talking with her tonight, there's a sincere interest in at least discussing in more detail how they can participate in this, and there have been other people that have reached out as well. But I think this is going to be hopefully a very efficient floor plan which will accommodate everyone's needs, including the sailing, is it Sailing Group Association?
The Yacht Club.
The Yacht Club, thank you, excuse me, Yacht Club, absolutely. We did have some discussions about the floodproofing. I think Anne Marie's already discussed that with the town council. I don't see any need to go back into that. I think the next big question to discuss is this outdoor seating. You can see currently from the site plan looking down what the opportunities are. This is what David had proposed, the architect. That was just kind of a placeholder as to what potentially could take place out there. I don't know that that at this point that is a true accurate description. But I think it's inevitable that people, when they do come to the brewery, are going to want to migrate outside, and so we do need to at least go ahead and address that. That's another, I guess, another schematic, so to speak, that he had placed in to show potentially what it could look like. So what we're proposing then, there are really two ways to look at this. I think if in order to address the screening issues is you can go with just what we would consider a fence with some kind of screening, like a 5-6 foot fence. And I'm not sure that that's, in my opinion, the right approach. So we put together just a couple of slides showing what we think the opportunities are for what this is being called a beer garden. But it's a really small space, so I don't think you need to get too overwhelmed with that concept. But there will be people walking outside, and we want to contain that and screen it from the playground as well. So my first slide really shows how we think we can screen this from the road as you're driving by. And again, we would like to use some kind of natural plants with a wall, so that as you're looking down, you somehow try to screen that entrance into the beer garden. This is a beer garden in Philadelphia that's probably one of our favorite designs. It's much larger than what we would do, but I still think that's more in line, more with the aesthetic piece of Edenton that we would like to do. But this use of reclaimed wood, brick, and just really a very nice place to go outside and enjoy a beverage, I think is the approach that I would like to take, versus just having some seats and a table and a fence with some screens. This is David's thoughts on potentially a wall with some live screening. And again, these are just initial slides from him. This is something that, you know, at night, would you be interested in some kind of lighting? Seems to make sense, but it's also a very warm, inviting place to come. I think that's more similar in the size of what we could potentially accomplish. But it seems to be a really warm, inviting atmosphere. That's probably a little higher scale, obviously much larger, but another kind of idea of what we're thinking. So it's not just a fence surrounding some tables. Again, I think that's more, in my vision, that would fit in better here in the town of Edenton. So these are just really some opportunities to have a discussion. We have, in talking with David, maybe 10 to 15 hours of additional design work to really come back to you with, if indeed, you know, with some specifics. But what David and I, the architect, are looking for is some direction as to what the town or the town council is thinking is the best way to approach this outside seating screening. And these were just, in our mind, probably the best approaches to accomplishing that. And believe that is really what we wanted to discuss tonight, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, sir. Before we get in, Emery, into your report, I think we should, while it's fresh, have a conversation about some of the proposed screenings. So I will open up the council table to address Mr. Glover on the slides that he just presented relative to anything really that was said, and for sure interest on the screening part, and I'm also confident there'll be some more questions about the food piece. So anyway, whatever you like to, he needs some information to.
John, go forward one screen, if you will. Just, no, maybe it was backwards. That one, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Where are you proposing to put that?
It would separate potentially the park from the outdoor seating.
Okay.
So the logic is that as you're looking down from the street, that there would be some type of definition to hide, you know, at least try to screen the outdoor seating. Then you would potentially look down into the water, thinking we'd leave that view open, but then have a screen down the left, as I'm calling the side on the park, that would really just completely screen, if possible, the park from the outdoor seating.
I really like the live, you know, the live fencing. I think it looks great. I think it is warm and inviting, like you said, and I think it'll be a place people from the back and the front want to be in. So right. I mean, I don't think it'll be a great big wall against the park, and I think it is welcoming to sit in. And we sort of have that, you know, now with what Malcolm does. He's got a bunch of plants and stuff on that in his screening area, and I mean, it works really well with the neighborhood.
What's the height of that, just for reference purposes?
I think that in talking with David, the wall, he's thinking that potentially somewhere you could sit. So that wall, the brick wall, would be somewhere in the 4 foot, possibly, and then just the height of those vines are whatever you. Yes, correct. Whatever.
Okay.
But again, I think the opportunity is to use some really unique hardscape. And what we would do is engage David, and we actually have another team in Raleigh that did the Museum of Art that's working on a project for me currently, as well as the Gregg Museum in Raleigh, and we could potentially engage them as well. Surface 678, they're extremely talented, and believe it or not, they actually have someone on staff who specializes in these type of gardens. But I think that's really the direction that I think we should take versus just trying to put some tables outside and a fence with some screening. I think the opportunity is to make this a really unique destination as far as a beer garden that fits in the style of Edenton's architecture as well.
So far as your outdoor sitting area, are you planning to do that just on the end as you were showing there? Or are you planning on encompassing the rear of it as well? Or?
Right now, it's just the end, the rear of the building, the street side.
No.
The water side.
To the water side.
We have not gone into any detail on that. It would just be the side of the park.
It's extremely limited. The site does not have that much land.
Exactly.
Next to the water.
Next to the water.
Well, actually, on the water side, you don't have any.
Exactly.
You've got
It's
6 feet.
Several feet, yeah.
And the only real expansion area or area that would be practical for this, based on how it is right now,
Right.
is in what we would call the front of the building. And I think that would be viable, particularly the slide that you had of the open area and the go back next with there. That kind of look would work well on that side. I'm not opposed to the water side, but unless we find changes to the restrictions that the town has, you're not going to be able to do anything on the water side, and that's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. And to your point too, Bob, I think that since it is so limited in its space from the footprint of the building out toward the waterfront,
Right.
that closing that off, if you will, by whatever screening device you ultimately decide to do, that would also help address concerns people have about customers drifting out into the park area itself. The back wall of the building with an appropriate vegetation buffer, I think would also serve to discourage people from walking away from the designated place. The term screening has a lot of negative connotations, but screening with plants, I'm like you, I'm not crazy about a wall type of circumstance, but foliage, plants, vines, but I like this kind of thing, and in the front of the building, that would look like an appropriate part of the building, I think.
I mean, it's exactly what everybody's doing in downtowns now. I mean, there's even in, we were in Winston-Salem recently, and they're doing it all downtown Winston-Salem with this kind of screening. And it just makes it look alive and vibrant and not dead, and you know, like somewhere you want to go. And the lights, I think, are great.
That's what Ashland's doing too.
Yeah.
Color as well. Yeah. I like all that. But I think we have to be honest about this. You can't do anything on that water side, and those pictures are wonderful with people walking around and standing up, but that's not going to happen according to the restrictions that we have, unless we have some magic wand that I'm not familiar with. Tell me.
No, I mean, it's very, I mean, the town, in order to have land on the water side be removed from the restrictions that are on that land now from the federal grant, the town would have to either acquire or obtain open space somewhere else and petition the state and the Park Service
I understand.
to approve a release.
So didn't we talk about doing that?
We did, and unfortunately, the initial response from the state was that we could do that with the land around the building, but when she came and did a site visit and realized that all that land was under the conservation grant, it would have to be some land outside of the area that's under the conservation easement.
But Mr. Glover has to know that so that he can plan around it or accept it or deny it. I don't want you to be misled.
Right.
That's where I'm coming from, and that's an honest,
Absolutely.
absolutely honest from my viewpoint. No matter how many want the idea, if it's not viable, it's not viable. And I don't want you to be misled.
I have not, Anne Marie and I've had that discussion. I think we have an email on that as well about that, so I'm aware of that.
There's been a lot of due diligence on this property.
Pardon?
There's been a lot of due diligence in this deal. 2.5 years worth.
Well, I don't think you can do too much and be fair and right. I do like this.
Well, I think what we're looking for, frankly, is some direction that we can continue to move forward. We need to either say yes, that the town council is going to move forward with the sale of this building, so that I can engage my team again. We spent a great deal of time, money, and effort so far between architectural fees, flood-proofing engineers, and I think what we can do is then work up some more detailed hardscape plans to get some true feedback on that as well. And then on the food piece as well, we really need to drill down into what's going to take place on the food side and how big of a kitchen do we truly need.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. I know we have great expectations for food.
Yeah, right.
But you have to operate within
Correct.
the confines that you have and what your program is.
Right.
But again, like my desire personally, and I'm sure it is with the rest of the council, we do not want to mislead you or
Correct.
indirect or give false impressions or concepts. But at the same time, the people who are eager for this or want this have expectations.
Certainly.
The mayor spoke to the town at one time and mentioned fish platters, barbecues, shrimp platters, and so forth and so on, which I would like to see as small a kitchen as you can have, but at the same time,
I agree.
I don't know. I mean, I think you have to have a food plan, and we haven't heard one except when you were here before, you said you were going to have some kind of food.
So when you say a food plan, can you give me more details on what you would like to see?
No, I'm not me. I'm
Right.
not going to be
Right.
the foodie there.
Right.
I'd be the beery, but I'm not
Great.
gonna be
Absolutely.
the foodie.
Well,
But I think it's appropriate that people understand what they can expect, or in your situation, what you can do.
Well, I think we've been very upfront about that. The size of the kitchen will limit what we can create from the food side. And we will bring in consultants such as the group from On the Square in Tara. Her comment, Inez's comment to me tonight, and feedback I received from some others who are interested in the project as well, is that it's more of a bar food, if that's the right terminology, but upper scale is what we prefer to do. Tacos, fish platters, and I think all that can be accomplished in the kitchen as it is designed currently. I don't think that we will not be presenting an upscale restaurant to be in this brew pub. So from that perspective, I think the town should understand that means tacos, burgers, bar food.
Yeah, and John, I also believe that the demographic, for lack of a better word, of a brew pub is such as that.
Right.
I mean, it's not a fine dining destination.
Right.
I don't think it could be misconstrued in any way that that's what somebody would expect to get when they looked at your menu.
Right. Well, let's be honest. The food, I don't know, will be the driving force behind the success of this restaurant, this
Right.
brew pub. What we can provide to you is a really exciting, I think, destination for craft beer enthusiasts. Now they stop in Tarboro, now they go to Raleigh. I think there's now potentially a brewery in Elizabeth City, if I read that correctly. Why not Edenton? And I think we've got an amazing opportunity with this building and this location. And I've got a truly amazing, experienced team. If you add up the collective experience of beer experience I have in my team, it's over 100 years. So what we will bring to Edenton is an amazing beer experience that will then, in my mind, be complemented with hopefully an amazing food experience, but it's going to be at a scale that's more of a bar scale. But I think if you visited some of these upper end brew pubs, you can see what they create from the food side. So I'm confident the food and the beer will create a real destination for the town of Edenton.
Just rendering one man's opinion, I think it should be at a scale that keeps the kitchen inside the main building,
And
whatever that is.
We're absolutely.
Because, I mean, that is a great concern to a lot of people in the community, particularly in the surrounding neighborhood. And I think from what you showed early on in that new footprint, or the new interior layout, I imagine, I don't know, because I'm not a foodie. I mean, I'm a consumer of, but don't know how much space you need to do what type of menu. But
I believe that kitchen will be sufficient for what we want to accomplish, and that is our goal.
Is the kitchen in the back corner?
It's right here in the middle. I'm sorry, you can't read that. I believe that says kitchen.
I can't.
I'm so bad as well. I apologize. But I believe it's that.
Got it.
Yeah, and I think the good thing about this, the food component, is that is exactly what we need. We have, within 100 yards, we have 3 other restaurants, and then the Inner Banks Inn and fine dining. So I mean, we have 3 other go in, sit down, order. It takes a while, get you whatever you want. And this is something that I think that will probably be a lower price point, and people in the whole community can come in and quickly eat. If they want to have a beer, that's fine, and then go home. So I think it's something we really need, a really casual, kind of interesting, hip, cool place.
what's the proposed seating capacity in that schematic?
I believe that's 20. If I'm, you mean for the kitchen or for the?
No, from as
The brew pub itself.
yeah.
I believe that's 40 on that right-hand side. I have to count the seats. I don't have that right in front of me.
Okay.
But that's to scale. And honestly, that's a lot of space, a lot of seating space.
Yeah.
Does
the beer industry, does the pub industry have to have X number of dining seats to serve beer? It's not like distilled liquor, is it?
No.
Yeah.
The nature of these brew pubs now is that you can create some very exciting opportunities for these craft beer enthusiasts to come to your town to enjoy product beer that they cannot get anywhere else. And I believe that is what my brewmaster's name is Ian Van Gundy. He's an award-winning brewmaster, and that's what we hope will happen here, is that he will have that opportunity to create some really amazing products, which will be supported by a food component as well. It's a wonderful location.
And I think the screen that you're proposing next to the park would be very enhancing as well, and should take care of some concerns there.
Yeah.
I've had some people call and ask me if I knew, and I'm learning.
Right.
But a couple of questions. You've answered one, was where was the kitchen going to be?
Great.
And I just discovered that. That's a good idea, I think.
Glad, absolutely.
And then another question, is there a planned back door to the building? Is there an exit to the back? And that's probably not an easy question. I was trying to figure that out myself, but it looks like you've got an exit in the upper right-hand corner that goes into, is that a drive backing up there?
That is
trash.
I believe you and I had a trash discussion at your house. Right. Yes, sir. So that was,
well, it looks like you did.
Yes, sir. So we put that together as a potential trash drive. But again, I think in being sensitive to the neighbors, will we need that? I'm not sure. Hopefully not. But the opportunity, as you requested, we put together a waste plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, as far as the back door, if you would.
You got to have one.
I believe we would. So we would have to.
Fire marshal's going to make sure that happens.
Right. So we've not. Again, this is a schematic. Once we get permission to move forward, then we will drill down into those details. Another question?
I assume the back of the building, I understand per your statement, the back of the building is actually one of the best view sections of the building. You were looking out at the water on that side.
Correct. So as you can see, absolutely. At one point in the first schematic, we had the actual part of the kitchen on that far side near the yacht club building out. And we've moved the seating over there so we could hopefully try to take advantage of the views. But again, it is a historic building, so we're not sure what we'll be able to accomplish.
Not making an assumption, but once you determine the capacity and capabilities of the kitchen area as it's laid out in the inside central part of the bigger building, do you have any proposed uses for what's now being used as the yacht club's facilities?
No, I think no, sir, Mayor. It's if I understand it correctly, that's a very sensitive point amongst the citizens here in Edenton, and so it would be our hope and goal that they would continue to be able to utilize the yacht club, to utilize that building. I'd love nothing more than to be able to look out and see them taking boats out into the water and utilizing that space. And that's why we had them move the kitchen. Part of the reason we had to move the kitchen to the middle of the building.
Other questions or comments for Mr. Glover, Councilman? Okay, thanks a lot.
Yes, sir.
We appreciate it, and also to you and your team for the efforts you are making to accommodate the concerns that have been expressed, not only at this table, but in the community as well. So, thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
All right, in keeping with our agenda for this evening, we are, in order to move forward toward the public hearing, we need to have an economic impact update, and I'll turn that over to Anne Marie, please, ma'am.
Yes, Mayor, and the council is aware, we've talked about it numerous times, that the proposed purchase or the proposed sale of the building would be accomplished utilizing statutes that allow the town to sell property for economic development purposes. And that the statutes require that a public hearing be held and that notice be given to the public of the interest that is proposed to be conveyed, which of course we know is the Conger building and the property around that footprint, and then the value of the interest. And the building was appraised in November of 2014. That appraisal price was $282,000. The tax value that was set during the reappraisal also in 2014 was almost identical. I think it was $284,000 or $286,000. And then the notice of the public hearing would also have to list the proposed consideration. How much money are you going to sell the property for? And the statutes would allow you to sell it for less, but then there would have to be agreements and evaluations done based on the economic impacts that would be generated. But in this case, Mr. Glover has put forth in his proposal to purchase the property for the appraised value. But the statute does also require that the governing body can not accept anything less than the property, anything less than what the fair market value is. Again, if you were going to use it as an incentive, that would require a different type of analysis. But because you're not doing that you're proposing to sell it for what the fair market value is, the public notice has to state that. You are also required to determine what the probable average hourly wage would be paid to the workers by the business that's located on the property. And Mr. Glover has reported creating a minimum of 2 full-time positions with an average hourly wage that will meet or exceed the 2017 annual wage standard for Chowan County. The average annual wage standard for Chowan is $28,724 or $14 an hour. And of course, the project will also create up to 5 part-time server positions. In addition to looking at the job impact, you asked that we have commissioned an in-plan report, and we sent you a copy of that report. You received that back in 2015. And that is a nationally recognized economic modeling software project that measures value added from proposed businesses. And that report in 2015 produced or projected that the value added from the operations of this business would be approximately $175,000 a year. Now that is just for the business itself. That doesn't take into consideration any spin-off impacts, which we know when one business comes, it does create additional economic impacts. So those are the findings that you would need to make in the notice if you decide tonight to call for the public hearing. that we would make sure that those findings are included in the motion. And the public hearing, the notice has to be published at least 10 days prior. So we would, if you set a date tonight, we would not be able to advertise it until next Wednesday in the Chowan Herald. So you would have to look at having a public hearing date at least 10 days from next Wednesday. Looking at the calendar, you could do a public hearing at a special meeting at your November 27th meeting, the Monday after Thanksgiving. Or you could do a special meeting one night that week. Your regular meeting in December, the second Tuesday, that meeting is when the new council members are seated. And in the past, traditionally, I can never remember a meeting where, but I'll have to go back and check, where you had considerable action items on that meeting. Normally, the new council members and returning council members take their oath at the beginning of that meeting.
Okay, any questions of what you just heard relative to?
I've got a couple of questions I'd like to ask. In looking at the timeline that we went through, and also the economic justification for the sale, I came across some information which I don't know if I don't think it was considered in this, and it maybe is not appropriate to be considered, but it struck me it was information that I would think that people would be interested in. I found the tax records for the county, that it's online and it's open to the public for anyone. And it kind of surprised me as to the way how accessible it really is. But it actually gives for this park a land value, tax land value. It gives a tax land value of $1,976,400. And looking at that, I mean, if you broke it into lots of just a tenth of that land tax value would be $198,000. The land for what we now refer to as the Elizabeth Van Moore Park, old Queen Anne Park, it shows a land tax value of $667,000. I never knew that they were even valued in that manner, but they are. The property at 503 South Broad Street, which we would commonly know of as Francis Inglis property, has a land tax value of $290,000. The tax value for the ice house, just the tax value, is $370,588. The council chamber, this building is valued, the building is valued at $531,000, this building. And when going through it, I became enamored with what I was finding, and I kept going. And I looked at residential water frontages, and they ranged from a low of $599,000 for a home, a resident. So I researched at least five, quite a few more than that. But for example, they ranged from 599,000 to $1,025,000. One business in our area at 112 Water Street, Churros, is on the market for $399, and it sold for considerably more than that when it was sold the last time. I don't know what to make of all that, but it strikes me that when we first began this exercise, I was quite concerned with the type of taking a, what I call at that time, a brick and mortar assessment of the property, saying that you will not get value for the property based on where it is or what it is, but how it's made. And that's what our product came back as being. It was bricks and mortar. It would be the same if that building was located on Highway 32, 10 miles out of town. I understand the justification information which you produced, and I know that that's a suitable approach. I just felt compelled to share what I've learned. And it's there for people to understand better what we do.
Mayor, could I make a motion
Sure.
to go ahead and set the date on November 27th to advertise it and have the hearing on that day?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to set.
Say the date again.
November 27th, the Monday after.
Regular Monday.
Yeah,
meeting,
regular
fourth Monday.
Motion and a second to have the public hearing.
And Mayor,
Do we have a
we will look for an alternate location that can accommodate more people. Sure.
Okay.
And Mayor, can I just ask about adding a
Yeah,
couple
please
more
do,
days in
yeah.
the motion?
Yes.
Sure, yeah, I mean, because
Yeah.
you said in your explanation that that had to be part of it.
I just want to make sure we get it right for the record, that the motion includes that the interest to be conveyed would be the Conger Building property, the value of the interest, $282,000, which is based on the 2014 appraisal, and that the proposed consideration for the sale is $282,000. And also that the 18 covenants would go along with this property. We want to include that in the public notice.
That's fine with me. Add that to the motion.
You all right?
Yes, sir.
Second. Okay, we've had an amended, a couple of amendments to the original motion that both the motion maker and the second have agreed to. Any further discussion or comments relative to the date set for the public hearing? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed, no. All right, we will have the public hearing on November 27th. At a place TBD, right? All right, that completes our agenda for this evening, so I would like to again thank Mr. Glover for taking his time and effort put into the presentation for tonight and being with us. I'd like to thank all of you who came out to listen. Thank you, council members, for your questions and participation. And with that being said, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
We're done. Thank you.